as we talk about year-round real food production. How to grow, pick, prepare, and store your own food year-round. All right? Sounds like a good deal. I'm ready. But before you do this, you have to make a decision. What are you going to grow? Are you going to grow hybrid or heirloom? Now, the seeds, that hybrid seed has been developed primarily for storage, handling, and appearance. That's why it tastes like green cardboard sometimes. It wasn't developed for taste, okay? Heirloom seed's been selected for taste and nutrient density. That's why you have to put the Mr. Stripey's tomatoes up in the cabinets and close the cabinet doors when guests come, so you'll have some after they leave. You can get some out, but they may eat all of them while they're there if you don't do something, because they taste so good. I don't know whether you're familiar with Mr. Stripey's, but if you're not, you need to be. Heirloom seed can also be saved, but be advised you need to know what you're doing. You can't just go out and save this seed and expect in 5 years to be productively growing. You need to do it very thoughtfully, and there are ways and methods that you need to use as you save seed, but it certainly can be done. 95% of soybeans, 80% of corn and canola. One of the things I just got a call a few minutes ago from someone wanting molasses. Well, the best price I could find was for a 1.25 ton tote of molasses. 30 cents a gallon. That's not much. But I've got a bunch of questions. Is it GM cane? How was it raised? Are there any preservatives that were used in it? All of those things are normal to us who grow biologically, but they're not normal to the commercial industry of agriculture. So you have to be very careful. In 2011, 70% of the food that you'll find in a grocery store, I use that word loosely, has genetically modified material in it. Wheat generally is not genetically modified, but it's been hybridized to the point where there are some issues, and if you've read Wheat Belly, you understand some of those issues. So I would suggest that you concentrate on organic seed. The germ of the seed is larger, and until 7 or 8 to 10 days, that's all that seed is going to feed on, is the material within the germ. And so whether you're sprouting, you using it for direct seeding or for transplants in the garden, I'm going to suggest that you get organic seed. A fellow in South Dakota decided that he would try and figure out through the animals which was better, and so out on his squirrel feeder he put 2 ears of corn. One was this year's GMO ear of corn, and the other one was last year's organic. Now the question that and one of my participants said, you know, I'll bet all that refuse is the refuse from the GM. They decided real quick they didn't want that and switched over to the organic. So the question we're left with this morning is, are we smarter than a squirrel? Are we smarter than the animals? Because if they are given the choice, they will not eat GM. There is a good thing. Each of us, if we're not eating organic, will have a residual pesticide level. But the studies that have been done show that within weeks of adopting an organic dietary, that pesticide level will begin to drop. Amen. One of the things Jill and I have started to do, is take some Ormus zeolite, and that extracts the chemicals that we all have in our bodies out and cleans our body up from those chemicals. There are basically 3 types, and these are very broad generalities of produce. There's the warm weather fruit types, tomatoes, peppers, corn. And then there are the medium cold tolerant, the heads and the flowers, the broccolis, the cabbage. And in Tennessee, you can grow most of the medium cold tolerant. Maybe you need to use a floating row cover or something, but you can usually grow most of those all winter without heat. And then there are the cold tolerant, the roots and the leaves, the turnips, the carrots. You can go out and pull the straw away and dig carrots all winter long with the ground frozen outside. It's no problem. The carrots still, in fact, they probably taste better for having been frozen. Carol Depp, in her book, The Resilient Gardener, talks about the sustenance crops. The Indians used to grow what? Corn. What else? Squash. What else? Beans. Ran up on the corn. What else? One other. Pumpkins. Those are the sustenance crops. Understand that every microclimate will grow varying crops to various success. That's why when you're planting beans, you need to plant 3 to 5 variety of beans, and you need to keep changing that, because who's to say that anybody has discovered the right bean for your microclimate that will produce the best, all right? And that's why agriculture is an art. You're all the time learning. But I would suggest to you that I don't like just corn and beans and squash and tomatoes. Pumpkins, yes. And so I like cantaloupes too. And I like peppers, and we're all that way. So we begin to grow outside of our microclimate by adjusting our optimal environment to include an environment that's conducive to some of these other plants. All I'm saying is, as I look at the weather that's out there, I think you need to be very careful, because I don't see natural disaster, weather getting better. I see it getting worse. And as it gets worse, you will not want to be experimenting out on the fringes if you plan to eat and live off of what you're eating. You may need to core down into what you know will produce sustenance for you, and that's why I put that slide up there. Okay? Anybody here read the China study? If you have not, you need to do yourself the favor. The reason it's the most comprehensive dietary study done, the reason it was so successful is there are so many varied people groups and dietary habits within the country of China, that they were able to say, well, okay, if you eat this way, this is what you're going to get disease-wise. Pretty straightforward. I hate to say it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but you could say that. Last night we talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to add a couple more details. And let me stand right here so everybody can see. I'll try and stay in the same spot. That's hard. I learned from my wife, and she can't even talk without moving her hands. We know we covered the deep organic over here in the, okay? We know that mineralized soil from our iodine last night will give us 400 to 5,280% increase in the nutrients in that spinach. The studies that are there, if you mineralize the soil, will give you that much more. Ripe will give you 2 to 4 times the nutrients of picked green produce. Now, if you buy it out of the store, what are you going to get? Picked green produce. When I was at Fletcher, they said, "Oh, the berries are so wonderful." I was waiting too late. The wholesaler said, "They're ripe. They need to be black, but they still need to be green on the inside because we want shelf life." Okay? So understand that if you're able to go out and pick your own and it's fresh and ripe, you're going to be getting more nutrition. Okay? Organic, from the book Conscious Eating by Gabriel Cousins. I've always wondered if you had an organic diet, it just seemed to me like you should be getting more nutrition. But are you? Because I can show you some studies that optimally processed commercial produce will have more nutrition in it than poorly grown organic. Okay? And the studies are there and they're valid. So as we think about what we're going to grow, how we're going to preserve it, and how we're going to store it, we need to keep these things in mind. But organic, eating organic will give you about 88% more nutrition. That's a good thing. And then as we go on up, we talked about 400% of the nutritional requirements by being over here on the unprocessed side. Yes, they ate some things that we might choose not to eat, but they were whole foods. They were naturally preserved or stored by drying, salting, fermenting. Okay? So as I look at storage and preservation of nutrition, I want to be at the whole, which gives me 400% or more on this scale. From last night, we know that cooking reduces the nutrients about 80%, destroys the enzymes, and you probably know, but I'll review it just for a minute. When we're born, we have an enzyme bank. We have so many enzymes. And we use those enzymes up through eating a preponderance of cooked food or eating more often than 2 or 3 meals a day. If you snack a lot, you're going to use out of that enzyme bank and use it up. And the depletion of the enzymes in the body tends towards premature aging. So we want to step back from that cliff. Mineralized, we just talked about, and then raw, frozen, dehydrated. Each of those is going to be better than way down here. And then the dehydrated below 104. Low temperature dehydration. If you heat it, and there's a variety, okay? Some authors say 104 degrees, some say 115. I'm going to say 104 because I know that's less than 115 and I should be safe, okay? But low temperature dehydration Yes, dehydration will get some of the enzymes, but it won't get nearly the amount of enzymes that cooking and canning will out of food. And then your biogenic. These are the bioactive above the dehydrated, raw, fermented kraut. People say, fermented, well, kraut, you can ferment all sorts of different vegetables. The Asians do it in a variety of different ways, and they also use predigested. Now, I get a little squeamish about there. I'm sure the cook knows more about that preparation than I do, because I'm not really a fan of that. But sprouts and predigested, yeah, pollen, we talked about last night. But as far as superfoods, sprouts have up there in the 400 the sulforaphane in broccoli. Right there. So broccoli sprouts contain 5,000% more of the sulforaphane than fresh broccoli from the store. The sulforaphane are the things that tend to maintain or repair the DNA damage that oxidation causes. Nutrient density is highest 5 to 9 days after germination, and the proteins, vitamins, enzymes, and minerals are increased 3 to 1,200% in sprouts. Now, how much cooking is involved in sprouts? None. It's got to be the ultimate superfood, a survival food, because what do you need for sprouts? Water and a little bit of time. Yes?
Now, are you going to get that benefit mainly from eating it raw?
Oh, yes, you're going to eat sprouts raw, or you may dehydrate them and include them in things, but I certainly wouldn't cook them. Sure. And understand, anytime you cut a vegetable, it starts to oxidize. Yeah? Go quickly. We've got a long ways to go. We're going to talk about that. You need to sprout whatever grain you use. You don't have to put water on it for a long time, but GABA rice has a lot more nutrition in it. You just let it start sprouting. There are some rice cookers that will allow the rice to sprout a little bit and then cook it, and it will have more nutrition in it. We'll catch those in a minute. Super sprouts could help reduce cancer risk. Published in the University of Ulster University News, and going to be published in Cancer Epidemiology, Biomarkers, and Prevention. And what they say is 113 grams, right there. Now, 113 grams from our math last night is at 28 grams per ounce, is just over 4 ounces of sprouts. Now, in sprouts, that's a lot of sprouts. Okay? But you could put it in salad. You can have it in a sprout sandwich, those sort of things. Now, these sprouts weren't just plain old regular everyday sprouts. They were broccoli, radish, alfalfa, and clover, and they were associated with having clear protective effects against DNA damage in human blood cells. So they would provide that protective effect in our bodies by that amount of sprouts. 10 reasons for sprouting, up to 100 times more enzymes. That's a lot. Quality of protein in beans, nuts, seeds, grains improves. Fiber increases. Vitamin content increases. Essential fatty acid content increases. Minerals bind to the protein, making them more usable in the body. Ultimate locally grown food. The energy contained is ignited through soaking and sprouting. We talked about that a minute ago. Sprouts are alkalinizing. The ocean is an alkaline body of water. There is only man-induced disease is present in the ocean. And so we want an alkaline body. Incidentally, if you have an acid body, it tends to leach the minerals from where? The bones and the organs. Okay, you're getting where I'm going. Sprouts are inexpensive. I don't know what your sprouter can look like. It can look like this. This is a fancy one. It has alfalfa and wheatgrass in it, wheat sprouts. This one has wheatgrass, alfalfa, and sunflower. There are a number of resources that are listed in your handout for sprouts. The Miracle Food by Steve Marowitz is an excellent book if you want to know about sprouting. Good starting point. Eat Sprouts, www.sprouting.com. That is a company up in Canada. They also have a U.S. place where you can buy of organic sprouting seed, mums. The best guide about sprouting that I know of is this one right here, survival-blog/ultimate-sprouting-guide. That is a PDF sprouting guide, a good basic starting, good research sprouting guide. So if you're not all that familiar, you don't want to buy Steve Marowitz's books, that's where you go. Because I realize that minerals, we have a mineral deficiency problem, I use kelp extract in my sprout water. Now, you know, your rinse water, you do it one time the first day, and then you do it the 5th or 6th, depending on the length of time of your sprouts. You do it 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through their sprouting time. Just put it in the rinse water. Somebody said, well, yeah, but what if they float? Fine. If you're going to dunk them, dunk them. Put it in the water that you're going to dunk them in. It's okay. But get some minerals to them some way or other. As we look about year-round growing, how much canning and cooking do I really need to do? Because as I'm looking at it, I want living food, sprouts, bioactive. I'm going to have fall, winter, and spring vegetables. And from a hoop house or a frost blanket, I can have, and incidentally, you remember last night on the Andy score? Maybe we didn't even talk about that last night. Okay. Andy score is the aggregate nutrient density index, and kale and collards are king at 1,000. And the greens come along right in there behind, and they're relatively easy to grow. The most nutrition is fairly easy to grow, and here up to our area, you can grow them all winter long. So why do you want to, somebody asked me, can you grow pineapple here in Collegedale? And I said, sure, you can grow pineapple here, but it'll be the most expensive pineapple you've ever eaten. So think about what normally grows out there and grow it. Just make sure it has plenty of nutrients in it. You can have a greenhouse. You can use greenhouse plastic, and you can have a cold frame. You can do all sorts of stuff before you have to start pumping heat into something to grow the other type of crops, the warm weather crops in cold weather. You can also, incidentally, if you are around a community of plain people, you can learn a whole lot. Just because they ride in a buggy behind a horse doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. You can go down into the tomato patch with some bales of hay. Now, this is the poor man's version of a root cellar. And you can pull those tomato vines down into the center, and you can ring it with hay, and you can put hay on top, and you can be picking tomatoes out of there in, well, at least January, and probably February, maybe March, right off the vine. So why do you need to can them if you're going to have them fresh? Okay? And you pull that cabbage up with the root intact, and you take it inside into your root cellar, into some moist sand, and you put the root down in the moist sand and cover it back up. It's still alive, and you're going to get the benefit. Produce from your root cellar, there are some things. Booble's book about root cellaring is an excellent one. They're going to tell you some things that actually grow in a root cellar. Succession planting, you know what that is? That's planting every 2 weeks, so you have some right along when you get hungry for it, instead of just planting it once and having it once per year. My dad, on his nightstand, had a list of apples, blueberries, pears, and peaches in order of ripening succession. There are early summer apples, and then there are summer apples, and then there are fall apples, and then there are keepers. Understand there's a difference. And if you do understand that and you appropriately keep them, you can have apples year-round. Okay? This is in a hoop house. All it is PVC pipe with a floating row cover over it. We had blooming flowers in there at Christmas time in Collegedale. There's a greenhouse. That's a lot more fancy, a lot more intensive. There's a cold frame. Still producing vegetables, still coming. If you get your soil right, what you grow in that soil is going to have a lot more nutrition anyway. It doesn't matter where it is, okay? There's another cold frame. That's a fancy one. It's got probably some weights back there to let you lift the... Now make sure that if you don't have ventilation, you're going to have a solar cooker instead of a solar cold frame. So they make those temperature activated ventilator arms, so get some. Tips for preserving fresh produce. Don't wash it right away, but restrict moisture loss. A good chef will want produce unwashed. They'll wash it just before they eat it because they know that Sure, it starts the break. It provides water and moisture so that the stuff that will eventually rot it can get started that much earlier. I used to take stuff up to Fletcher Park Inn. Chef said, don't you wash any of that. I'll take care of it. Pack loosely. Restrict moisture loss. Now, I'm just a poor country boy, and there's a simple way to do that. In our spare refrigerator, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, I love red Marconi peppers. Like banana pepper, but they're sweet. And I buy them a tomato box at a time, but I don't eat that many at one sitting. So I take a Walmart bag, plastic bag, and I put about half of that tomato box over in that, and then I just tie it. Not real tight, because I'm going to want peppers, but I tie it so that I don't have any holes and it retains the moisture. You're not going to get any cheaper moisture retention system than that one, because it's free. Pack loosely and separate produce. Okay? Buy local. Grab from the front, not from the back. Huh? Fresh stuff's in the front. Usually those produce people are lazy. I was one. They put the stuff, they just put it in there. If you get in the back, that's the old stuff. Get the front stuff. It's fresher. Okay? If you don't eat it right away, buy frozen. Understand, you whack it off at the roots, the nutrition is going to start to tank. It will tank faster the less moisture it has and the higher the temperature. So if you keep the moisture, you lower the temperature, you're going to retain more nutrition. But I can tell you that if you're buying fresh produce from the store, how many miles average has it traveled before it gets on that shelf? 1,600. How many days old is it? Who knows? If it's not an apple, you may have a chance. Okay? But it will start, that fresh produce can have less nutrition in it than frozen. So you need to be very careful. Buy young, store it intact. Don't cut it up. We had a friend making a salad. Jill gave her 2 heads of lettuce. I thought, that's a wreck waiting to happen, because she prepared both heads. And she used a steel knife. 2 days later, it was brown, and I threw it out. Buy mushrooms exposed to light. Think twice about cooking. If you can eat it raw, do it. Drink fresh juices immediately. Understand that stuff begins to oxidize when it gets to the air. The more surface area that you have exposed to the air, the faster it's going to oxidize. So if it's a juice, it's all exposed, and you need to drink it certainly within an hour. Probably as you get it out of the juicer if you're going to juice. You want mineralized produce. As far as harvesting, you want perfect produce. You don't want spotty stuff that's going to go bad. You then want to prepare it. You can use food grade, a mixture of water with food grade hydrogen peroxide. You can use apple cider vinegar, or I use Kangen water. I use the strong acid to sterilize the produce, kill whatever might be on it. Then I rinse it in alkaline water, which extends the life of it. And then if you plan on keeping it for a long time, you can store it in a green bag. Are you familiar with a green bag? A green bag absorbs the ethylene oxide that is off-gassed as produce ripens, and when you pull that away from the produce, it tends not to ripen as fast. That's why organic bananas are really a good buy, because they have not been gassed and they are not going to ripen as quickly as standard bananas. You want to isolate this living produce. Now, what I did night before last is I washed you've got to beat the frost. So I'd gone and picked all the tomatoes. They were in a box. And all those peppers were in a box. And so I got 2 bins in the kitchen sink, one with acid water, one with alkaline water, and a whole deal of sandwich bags. And I plunked them in the acid water, rinsed them in the alkaline water, set them in a pan to dry up, and then in the evening I went back and stuffed them into those plastic bags to isolate them and put them in the refrigerator. And it's the refrigerator out on the porch, and we'll be eating tomatoes in February and March that were living, that were properly grown, and not those green cardboard ones that we have to buy from the store. Apples, pears, tomatoes, peppers, cabbage and beets. You can take both of those into a root cellar, or you can cover them with something out in the field. I had a 30 by 150 foot greenhouse that I put blankets on those nights when it was going to be below 25. And then 2 or 3, 4 or 5 nights I put a kerosene heater in there. Had produce all year, no heat, no nothing, just going along. There are various storage requirements that are generally accepted. 32 to 41 degrees with 85 to 90% relative humidity for the greens, and then separating the following in the crisper in plastic bags or containers, and a whole nother list. And you have these in your handouts. Then group 2, 45 to 55 degrees and 85 to 90%. Group 3, 50 to 60 degrees. Why don't you refrigerate tomatoes or cantaloupes if you can get by without it? What? No. What?
They say it takes the flavor away.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you refrigerate tomatoes or cantaloupe, peaches is another one. You'll get rid of part of your flavor by refrigerating it. Now, you may have to, but you'd want to think carefully about it. And then 65 to 70 degrees. Now, my dad always said that the shelf in the closet in the back bedroom, we didn't heat the back bedroom, so it was cool. It was at least 65 or lower. The shelf was where you put the sweet potatoes. Now, mind you, you put them there and you do not turn them over till you're ready to use them, because the sugar will go down in the potato, and if you turn it over, that will potentially rot that sweet potato more quickly by the sugar having to change in the potato. But dry onions, garlic, and tomatoes, those green tomatoes that I have sitting out on the counter, all of those can stay. So, as I said, I want to be from here up. So, well, now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I like frozen sweet corn, and frozen peaches are a whole lot better than canned. What about strawberries? Anybody like canned strawberries? See? So I probably will include some optimally processed frozen in that list. But again, I'm going to want to be right on up here as far, and that's going to affect what I grow, because I want to eat the good stuff. Fermenting, kefir, kombucha and cultured vegetables. I believe in the references. I'd have to look. There, Joe Mercola has a good article about culturing vegetables. What he does is he uses probiotics. You just put a couple of capsules in that culture, and you have probiotics in your ferment. Dehydrating below 104, yes, it sacrifices some of the enzymes. And then freezing and canning. Now, our family grew up on applesauce. I'm going to can some applesauce because I like applesauce. I don't know what your family grew up on, but I will tell you that I changed, and there's even a reusable lid for a quart jar that's better than a Tattler. I bought some because until that rubber ring, as long as that rubber ring is intact, you can can with, you use your standard metal rings, you just lift it up to make sure it won't pop like a metal ring, you know, ding, ding, ding. You could tell by whether it was sealed or not. It won't do that, but you can check it, and you can use them from now on. You don't have to worry about, well, that one says 118. I'm conservative, so I say 104. And if you look on Azure Standard and some of those large wholesalers, you'll find that they are now coming out with low temperature dehydrated unless there is rain. Now I can't mess with a farmer. If it's going to rain and he's doing low temperature dehydration and his dehydration will spoil because it's raining, yeah, throw the heat to it. I can take that. But so far as possible, I want it low temperature. Considerations for storage. Oxygen is a challenge. So the way you get rid of it is you put oxygen absorbers to absorb that oxygen. Now, if you're going to use the standard right now is probably a 5-gallon plastic pail, all right, with a sealable lid. You want to not put one Mylar bag in there, whether you use dry ice or an oxygen absorber, because when you open it, excuse me, when you open it, it's going to have oxygen. So you want to put bags, individually sealed bags in there, so you can open your can, take a bag out as you use it, and not compromise the storage of everything else in that bucket. Just understand that rats can chew through a plastic bucket. When you just put that in your equation, I don't know. You can use bay leaves to ward off insects. You can use diatomaceous earth. It's ground up shells that get in the insect's breathing and slices their innards and makes them die. Or you can throw it in the freezer for a week and take it out and freeze them all to death. Any of them will work. But you need to use a system so that you use last year's first before you use this year's. And this is a lifestyle. If you're not going to eat what you put up, why do you put it up? So don't be putting up stuff that you're not going to eat. So I tell Jill, don't bring candy or cookies in here, because if you bring them in here, I may eat them. You will eat them. Yeah, I hear you. So get the good stuff, but make sure it's on your diet, stuff that you're going to eat, and then adopt that as your lifestyle, as your dietary, and go right on with it, and you'll be a whole lot better off. You can have long-term cold storage. That's the old refrigerator. Okay? You can get real fancy with a root cellar. You can have part of it with a floor, part of it no floor, so you have higher humidity. Understand that if you put your onions in with a lot of your other stuff is going to taste like onions. So just think about it. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way, where you can go out into the field. It's real easy now, and you get a Walmart or wherever else plastic 55-gallon trash can with a lid. You dig a hole, put it down in there, line it, put your stuff down in there, cover it up, throw straw on the top, eat out of it all winter. Just throw the straw off, pick your stuff out, reverse it. You can do it. Cheap man's way to a root cellar. I was with a realtor the other day, and we went by a house. He said, you know, we always had. We had a place in the back floor of the back bedroom where the floor came up. And he said, I never thought my mother would quit. She had 500 jars of canned vegetables and 500 jars of canned fruits at the end of every growing season before we could quit. But he said, we always had something to eat. A lot of people talk about this, that, and the other, but if that is your lifestyle, if you buy whole in bulk, your dietary can be supplemented with all those things you grow, and you will be way up there above most people's nutrient intake, and you'll spend a whole lot less money as well. Gabriel Cousens, Conscious Eating, it's a good thick book, and it's heavy reading, but you are going to learn some things there that you as a vegetarian, if you've been a vegetarian your whole life, don't even know. Living Foods for Optimum Health by Brian Clement is probably one of the best overviews of a whole foods, living foods fermented diet. Brian Clement is director of the Hippocrates Institute. If you've never read the book Born to Run, you're a reader, you need to read it. Because Christopher McDougall was a 45-year-old runner who got to thinking, my $200 running shoes, and I've got foot challenges. And the Tarahumara Indians who go out and run 100 miles without any problem down in the Copper Canyon in Mexico, all they have is, well, they're made out of old tires for sandals. And so he went down there, and they didn't have any foot or ankle or running problems. And then he began looking at their diet. How many of you are eating chia? Chia seeds, yeah. Chia drink, that's what their energy drink was. It wasn't carbonated down there in Mexico. It was, there you go, it was the good stuff. And what were they doing to get their tamales? They were pounding it out of whole corn to get the meal before they made them. whole food. And he took a group with him, and they went down there and raced those guys down there. Got stomped under the canyon. But anyway, it's a wonderful book, but it's about lifestyle. I'm not proposing that you have to eat 100% raw. I am saying your enzyme level would love you more the more raw that you get in your diet. But understand, if you're going to die because you're not getting any food because you don't like it, don't do that. Okay? But if this is something that you might consider, there are some resources out there. 80-10-10 diet. Low-fat, plant-based diet. And he gets wonderful results from that as an athlete. Hot Chef's Cool Kitchen. Anybody heard of raw granola? Yes. What about raw torts? What about raw oatmeal? Yes. Yeah. You can do this. It's not that hard. Oh. Food storage secrets, I would have to tell you, is about the plain old way of storing food, canning it. So you probably won't find a whole lot of wonderful nutrition advice there. Root Cellaring by Mike and Nancy Bubel is the Bible on a root cellar. The Earth Sheltered Solar Greenhouse book. If I ever decide that I need a greenhouse, I'll tell you how I'm going to do it. I'm going to take a mini excavator and I'm going to dig down about this much in the ground. And then the rest of it's going to be about this high, because that's about where I work. It'll be that high before I put my growing medium in it, and it'll come up here where I can pick it and eat it at the same time, probably. Okay? It's all going to be in the ground, and then I'm going to put a greenhouse cover over the top. I'm going to earth berm it up so I don't have to dig it down that far. And I'm going to put the ventilation in it, and then you all can throw the wood to your heaters for your greenhouse, and I'll sit there and encourage you. I think that's probably the best plan for a greenhouse. What questions do we have? Yes.
What would you do about rain?
Rain? You're going to water one way or another. Any gardener has to optimize their water. You got to have a source. What you do is down at the bottom you collect all your rainwater, and when you need it, you use it. Yes, ma'am. What? You're on.
Okay, in the beginning you mentioned pollen.
Yes.
And we're concerned about it because of the GMO factor. What do you have to say on that?
There would be some concern. I would not dismiss that. But you're talking about a particular part of that plant in a very small amount.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Bee pollen. Bee pollen.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
The grains would be what the bee would collect. And I would not be nearly as concerned about GM in those grains of pollen as I would in the plant itself. Okay? Now, I would get fresh pollen that was frozen, and you're going to learn this from Gabriel Cousins. Get fresh pollen that was frozen within 2 weeks of its being collected. You want to make sure that it has not molded. And in the southeast, that's a challenge. Okay? And you also want to make sure that that pollen is from the area in which you live, because that will tend to protect you against various allergies and sensitivities for that area. Okay? Yes?
Talking about companion planting and
Yes?
successive planting, on Johnny's Selected Seed,
Good?
you go to their website and then tools and supplies, and from there you can have your last grow date for having your
Okay.
and stuff. They have a whole big list.
Good. That's an excellent. Johnny's is a really good source. Most of the people that work at Johnny's are also growers. So they're not just talking heads over here. They know it and do it. Pleasant Valley is a good one. Fedco is another good one. I tend to use Harris Seeds for seeds because I've always had good luck from them. There's some Larry turned me on to High Mowing Seeds for lettuce and some of those. There are some really good companies out there. I down in the middle because of their germination rate, quite frankly, and I've ordered thousands of dollars of seed. Germination rate. Some of them, yes, ma'am. And you have to be, and I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying that that's the experience that we have had. Not as good a germination. Okay, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Thank you so very much. Hopefully we'll get back closer to on track.